I think if you all were in Poland and likely the other countries where the Ukrainian refugees are headed, you would see the love and the humanity. And I think you would open your house. I really, truly, I think you would do whatever you could, because people are people and we need to help each other and be there for each other.
I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. You know that thing you've been thinking about doing? Yeah, that one. Why not now? Have you ever actually taken the time to ask yourself, what's stopping me? Let's talk it through. This is your chance to give that idea the attention it deserves and take action. Each episode, I have a chat with a fascinating person, from entrepreneurs to athletes, celebrities, my parents, rocket scientists, and all walks of life. We talk through a critical time when they've asked themselves, why not now? We dissect that day or even that moment, step by step. Today's episode is extremely special. It's different. It's timely. And I'm excited to give you context on how this came about. So Amy Browns-Taylor is on the show today. She lives in Poland, and she has been actively involved, personally involved, in helping refugees from Ukraine. She has individuals who have been living with her. She's been finding homes for many. And how this all came about was, and how she ended up as a guest on the show, is that Amy is a U.S. citizen. She is an Ohio native, and she's very good friends with Reagan Walsh, who is our chief renegade officer, my right hand, and one of my favorite humans. So Reagan told me about what Amy was doing and how this came to be. There are so many takeaways from this conversation, one of which, and a primary takeaway to me, is that the future of technology is the future of humanity. And what we choose to do with it as humans, with our behavior, will dictate what our reality looks like, what our experience of life looks like. And so technology is not good or bad. It is. What we do with it as individuals can unlock amazing good and create, obviously, plenty of evil. In this case, Amy Browns-Taylor has definitely found a way to leverage technology to be able to do a lot of good. This is an extremely organic story. It's heartfelt, it's real, it's deep, and it's not just inspiring, it's motivating. A little bit about Amy. So she is a communications professional. She's worked in many different industries and also in the world of education. She has her bachelor's in journalism, master's in arts administration, and she's just lived a colorful life. She has found herself, along with her family, living in Poland, actually for not that long. And before you know it, she had this opportunity to help her Ukrainian neighbors. She and her family have opened up their home to Ukrainians who have fled the war. And she's been doing this since the beginning of March. And it's incredible to see how organic this process came to unfold, and how generous not only has she been, but because of the use of technology and democratizing, opening the flow of money and love and support, she's been able to help a lot of other people beyond those who are living with her. So you will hear the stories. You will hear Amy's struggle with mental illness, depression. You will hear the stories of how the animals even play a role in this. And she's just an incredible human. I'm grateful for Reagan to turn on this opportunity and bring it forward just through a conversation. This was not even planned to bring Amy on the show, but it was something we arrived at together. Like, why wouldn't we do this? And here's one of the things I have to say. I've had a lot of conversations with friends and family who are wondering what their role is right now with Ukraine, with helping, with everything going on in the world. And one of the things that I've learned is that although we may not have the exact solutions at this moment, I mean, yes, absolutely, you can donate and find some incredible organizations that are doing really important work, boots on the ground, making things happen. You can try to give your time if there's a way to help. But sometimes we don't know exactly how to channel that energy. What I do know is that if we start with an awareness of our desire to help and we communicate that, the doors just start opening, and ways that we're able to contribute that we never imagined start surfacing. That's exactly how this came to be. And we all have an ability to help in such a unique way. We just need to talk about it and share our desire, because there's someone else out there that will help you figure out how to be that bridge, how to be that contributor. So I encourage you to continue to have these important discussions with the people you love. And if there's anything you can take away from this conversation, the amount of generosity and love and care and compassion that you will hear about from strangers to strangers is incredible. And it is heartwarming. And it is such a relief, I guess, for me at least, I would say, to hear. I hope you listen through. There is a link below. You can contribute and help Amy and her efforts. She's basically set up a real estate venture now to help with like housing, and it's incredible to see the operation that she's created. So know that you can click on the link below here in the show notes to support. I know I have and will continue to. And do what you can. So if anything, share this episode with someone who's trying to figure out how they can play a role or just learn more about the humans and the individuals in this scenario. Without further ado, here is Amy. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special episode of the Why Not Now show. I have Amy here with me from Poland. And Amy, thank you for being here with us in the spirit of Why Not Now and knowing everything you've been doing for the last several weeks, month plus. Can you tell me about a time when you had a big decision to make and you had to ask yourself, why not now?
Yes, obviously I'm in Poland. So just kind of a little backstory how we got here. Last year, my husband, Carson, had the opportunity to open a new manufacturing facility in Katowice, Poland, which is where we live now. And during the pandemic, he was working from home. We would have these conversations, and he was really working on this project and also, was going to need to travel here quite a bit. And so we just kind of kept continually talking about, well, what if we moved to Poland? What would that look like for a 2-year commitment while he got the plant up and running? And we ended up getting to a point where we said that we felt like this was a great opportunity for our family. At the time, my career, I would say I was sort of waffling a bit. So I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And I thought, this would be a great adventure. So we said, why not now? And moved here July of 2021. Having a very different experience than we anticipated, obviously, with everything that's going on next door with our neighbors in Ukraine.
So it's been less than a year that you've been in Poland. You're from Ohio. You are close friends with our chief renegade officer, Reagan Walsh, and that's how we connected. And you've really been doing some incredible things there. I'd love for you to share how it started and just share your story. When I started to hear more about what you're doing, I couldn't believe the humanity and the incredible desire to help.
Well, I'm sure as many people have felt all over the world, and many people listening to this, when the war started with the Russian invasion in Ukraine, I think everyone was just sort of shocked. I mean, I think that they had been talking about it for weeks, and we just felt immediately helpless, hopeless, like, oh my goodness, what can we do? And, my parents and my family, their immediate concern was us being in Poland, like, how far are you from, where the conflict has started, that kind of thing. And so it kept getting smaller and smaller, but I just was getting kind of a little anxious about that, to be honest, because, people were anxious and contacting me. You're really close. How close are you? That kind of thing. And I needed to channel that energy into something else. So I started to just kind of get online and look at Facebook groups, both in our community of Katowice, which is about the size of like a Columbus or a Cincinnati. We're about 3 or 4 hours from Lviv, depending on traffic, which, is a point in Western Ukraine where many people are fleeing from all over the country there. To get as far west as possible. It's kind of the last big city on the border, if you will. Yes. So we're about 3 to 4 hours from there. Like I tell my family, Cincinnati to Pittsburgh, and that makes sense to them. So I think I started to kind of get into I'm thinking about me and what, and people were saying, oh, are you going to leave? Our neighbors here in Poland, oh, Americans, are you going to leave? And we're like, why would we leave? We're safe and we need to help. And my husband and I have this joke about how this all started. We don't really know exactly when we decided to host a family. But I said, we disagree on a lot of things, lovingly, but hosting a family was not one of them. That was 100% something we knew we needed to do. So as I started getting on all these online groups in our communities, both in Katowice, where we live, and then in Krakow, which is an hour from here. And that's, the second biggest city in Poland. So only an hour away. So I started to see the Krakow communities, particularly the expat communities. There are really good expat Facebook groups. And I started kind of seeing them mobilize. So at first, I started looking at, okay, what can I do in Krakow? But then I started seeing the Katowice ones come online. And our mayor here has done a tremendous job at mobilizing companies and volunteers and warehouses and transportation. And I'm sure that other cities in Poland are seeing very similar things, but I've been really impressed with the organization of Katowice and getting, people from the border to here to live. So we, within a few days, had found a family, so an acquaintance who I had been communicating with because she was working with transportation on humanitarian aid going to Poland and then bringing refugees back to Poland. And she contacted me and said, could you take a mother and her mother, so the grandmother, the mother, and a 4-month-old baby? And I was like, oh my gosh, well, we don't have any baby stuff. My children are 12 and 8. We have 3 dogs, by the way, rescue pups that are part of our family. And we brought from the United States here to Poland with us, of course. So we had the space, but certainly didn't have any of the baby things that are needed. And my acquaintance said, no worries, I'll get all of that together. I just need to know that they can stay there. And I said, yes, of course. So my children were very excited. Avery and Parker, they're 12 and 8. Oh my gosh, there's going to be a baby in the house. We get to, hang out with a baby, and we were getting all prepared for them. So this was March 4th. So about a week after the war had started. And they were to come to us on Friday night. And the organization that my friend was working with, they lost contact with them. And to this day, I don't know what happened to them. They were coming from the Sumy region, which has been very much an area that's been really destroyed. And so we don't know what happened to them. I think about them every day. I don't know their names. I don't know anything about them except those things that I just said, who they were, and that the baby. So that was a very difficult thing to explain to my children. I don't have words for it. But as we were kind of like getting ready and I started searching for other families and getting in touch, I had, put my name and email and our contact information on all these listservs, like, I mean, probably 50 of them. So somehow Max texted me on Friday night and said, you probably don't have room anymore, but I wanted to see my aunts and my cousins. They're 15-year-old twins. They're coming from Kyiv, and Max lives in Katowice. He came here to study 5 years ago and fell in love with a Polish girl and liked Katowice. So he lives here permanently. So, they were coming to stay there. Would you be able to have them? And I said, well, we're still waiting to hear about this mom and baby and grandmother because they're due to arrive, but we've lost contact with them. But I will get in touch with you in the morning and we'll go from there. So I got in touch with Max when we lost contact with the other family and said, yes, they're welcome to come here. So he started to give me a little bit more information about them. And I never did the online dating thing, but this whole like matching families and pairing, it's very awkward and uncomfortable, So I'm telling Max about my family. He's telling me about his aunt and his cousins, and we're kind of going back and forth to make sure that it will be a good fit for everyone. As we were preparing to host a family, I was reading any kind of resources that I could find, like, what are the proper things to do when you're hosting a refugee family? What do they need from you? What can you do to make their experience as comfortable as possible when they're dealing with the unimaginable? And so I felt like we were very prepared with the guest room, with everything. And so that was an easy thing that everyone in the family pitched in on. But, once they arrived is when it was evident immediately it was going to be difficult on everyone. It's uncomfortable. You have complete strangers coming to your house. They are putting their trust in people in a foreign country. And not only were we in a foreign country, but we're expats. So we're not even from Poland. So it just added more, complexity to it.
Was there a language barrier too?
Yes, 100%. So in Poland, 90% of people under, I'd say 40 speak English. And so, it's a very much part of their curriculum and their schools, et cetera. So we did not anticipate that there would be the language barrier at all. We assumed that the 15-year-old twins at least would speak, conversational English, and they did not. So they speak Ukrainian and Russian. They're trying not to speak Russian at all right now in protest, but they're very close. My understanding is the two languages are about 60% the same. So they do go back and forth a lot, and they'll give us, a word and then just say, well, this is the Russian way, this is the Ukrainian way, because several words are used interchangeably. Yes, so Google Translate has become our best friends. It's remarkable, like the technology. I mean, certainly there are some discrepancies, but you can get enough understanding to understand what the point is. But Alina especially has improved in her English in the last 5 weeks. I mean, it's absolutely tremendous. Meanwhile, our Ukrainian and Polish continue to be, really awful. They're very difficult languages for sure.
So let me set the stage, Amy. So you have, at this point in time in your story, you have 15-year-old twin girls, female.
Yes. They're a boy and girl.
Oh, sorry. Boy and girl. Sorry about that.
Yes, that's okay. Yes. So Alina and Yaroslav.
And then a 20-year-old friend of the family, Alana. Yes. Is that right?
Yes.
Their mom did come originally.
Yes.
And grandma?
Natalia. Yes. So Max has been sort of the center of everyone coming to Katowice. He's their cousin. And so, yes, so he's been the center. So people have been in and out There are many people, family, friends who have stopped at Max's on their way to somewhere else. Like he just hosted some family friends headed to the Czech Republic that were moving there to settle there. So, but yes, when the twins originally came, they came with their mom, Natalia, and obviously their dad had to stay. I shouldn't say obviously, but just to clarify for anyone, the rule, if you will, kind of like, when they used to do the drafts back in Vietnam, etc. But the rule for Ukrainian men was anyone, between 16 and 60. Now, I've heard various different, age ranges, but that's sort of the basic, had to stay to work or to fight. They made a few exceptions, one being, obviously medical reasons. The second was if the man was not Ukrainian born, he was allowed to travel with his family outside of the country. And then if a husband had or a father had 3 children or more. So, Natalia and her husband just had the 2, so he had to stay and fight.
So
And
he's back in Kyiv, and so you have your 15-year-old twins, their mom Natalia, grandmother, your kids, Avery and Parker, 12 and 8, your 3 dogs, you and Carson. And this language, obviously the language barrier and the trauma that they're going through.
Yes.
And transition. Yes. Okay. So didn't people just start sending you money, like friends and Venmo? And
they just started sending us money. Like I logged into my Venmo one day.
And just this was before they knew the family was with you, or... Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to skip forward.
Yeah, so I had posted on Facebook that we were, because so many people kept reaching out to us as the war started. I think, friends and family, like I said, were nervous about how close we were to the war. And so I finally just said, people kept reaching out. I posted on Facebook and said, just to my friends, family, and said, we're hoping to do what we can to help people fleeing. And we have decided as a family that we are going to open our house to a family who needs respite and, a place to stay for however long. So we just, we did have, really long discussions as a family and came to the decision that this is something we wanted to do. Parker gave up her room. We are kind of fortunate that we have 4 bedrooms. So one we use as a den and an office. And so that we were able to, separate that. And then Parker moved into Avery's room, which has been, an adjustment for sure, but gladly gave up her room. So that had bunk beds. So we were able to accommodate more people because of that.
Amazing. And so you start sharing on Facebook, and part of the thread here when I started to hear your story from Reagan was like, I've always been an advocate of how the future of technology is the future of humanity, and we can democratize, help access so many things when we use technology in a certain way. It can be good, it can be bad. It's not about the technology, it's about the humans that use it and what we decide to do and how we behave. So you're using Google Translate, you're posting on Facebook, then people just start Venmoing you money, stranger, right?
Right.
So then what? So we've got 3 platforms already that have just accelerated this process.
Right. So in the meantime, I was getting messages from my mom and my dad. My mom is a retired English teacher living in this small community, Defiance, Ohio, where I grew up. So they literally know everyone. So, my mom had told someone, and it's, the telephone game. And then my sister, my older sister, also lives in a community in Ohio and is in a farm community. And she and her husband are both teachers. And it just kind of started spreading. And then an organization that I have worked with in our home community of Montgomery, which is a suburb of Cincinnati, the organizer, the head of that organization is called Sycamore Bridges. And what they do is they have advocates in the community who work with the schools. And when a student needs, some sort of support financially or with transportation or, all kinds of things, they can go to those advocates, and then Sycamore Bridges sends out the need request, and then they get fulfilled. And so they contacted me, and I had worked with them in various different capacities. And Lori, who's the executive director there, said, I want to do a needs request for you. And I was like, but we're not in Sycamore. We're not in Montgomery. She was like, but you're a Sycamore family and people want to help. So that happened as well. So now we've got that. And then at that point, we were getting money into our accounts. People had asked for using Zelle to our US account. And so we just had to start a GoFundMe because it was just getting to be too much to keep track of. So we didn't exactly plan to be. And then when the money started pouring in, we had way more than we needed for what we were doing. And we were, totally comfortable handling our expenses for the family that was staying with us. So this money kept coming in. So I started finding other families. And, I'd put my name on all these listservs. And so people started coming in. And I would say, well, I'm not, we're already hosting a family, but let me see if I can find you something. So I was able to place 2 families, one with an expat, Karma in Warsaw, and then another one with one of Carson, my husband's colleagues, Matush, and his wife. And so that happened. And then I started just like, well, we'll provide expenses and cover expenses for those families, that kind of thing. But the money kept coming. And so we started renting flats, apartments, to put families, to give them a place to stay. So that's where we're at today. So we've rented 3 apartments so far. We have a family moving into the 3rd apartment on Thursday. And then we've paid for another lease. We didn't rent it directly, but had worked with this real estate firm, and they're kind of, now we're really partners. So they have these really nice apartments in the city center. So it's great because there's public transportation. If the mom or the grandmother, they're typically women at this point, if they're going to get a job, it's right at the city center, and also the transportation. But the apartments are fully furnished, including, dishes and all of that stuff. So you pay a little bit more money for those, but, you have everything that they need other than towels and bedding and some other little things. So we've been able to cooperate with them. And now if they have a vacancy, they're letting me know first, which is really awesome. So there's 2 coming up in a couple weeks that we're hoping that we'll be able to raise enough money to get those 2. And that would bring us to 5 apartments renting. So
we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Hi, everyone. If you are digging this podcast, please do us a favor and subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. It just takes a moment and it means a ton to us. So I want to make a couple of acknowledgments here. You provide updates, right? So having contributed to your GoFundMe, and then, well, first of all, Reagan shared, and then I read, and then immediately went and contributed and just trying to figure out, well, what can I do? But I'm just going to read a small excerpt from one of your updates because I feel like I know the twins all of a sudden, reading this, and I want to know how they're doing right now. And I read this part. You said, there's a dearest American friends, and you share a little bit of what's going on with the weather in Poland, the sunset. Mm-hmm. And you said this week, in addition to attending Polish school, the twins started online lessons in their school in Kyiv. Am I saying that right? Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Uh-huh.
Things have calmed down a bit.
That's the capital.
Right. Things have calmed down a bit. And Natalia wrote today that last night they enjoyed an evening free of air alarms and were able to sleep in their own beds instead of at the hospital. She misses the children tremendously, but continues to do important work at her hospital. The same hospital recently featured on CNN and BBC for temporarily housing children with special needs who were evacuated from the hard-hit area of Sumy. Am I saying that right?
Sumy, yeah.
Sumy, before heading to a safer zone Libby.
Mhm.
So when I read that, and just I could picture you writing this update. I could picture your household, and it made me feel like this is a safe place to contribute and send and do whatever I could to support. And I'm not any different than anyone else. But sharing the stories is what has caused behavior changes, I think, right? Because we hear it, we see it on the media, we know, but are we actually feeling it? And your words and ability to storytell has been everything. So how are the twins doing?
It's today it's been a really rough day, a really rough day. And that is because Alana, the 20-year-old family friend of theirs that's staying with us, she and Yaroslav have a stomach virus. And I can only describe it as violent. So they are on the mend. We've been taking care of them today. So today's been really, really difficult because I think if you think about when you're sick, when you're really, really, really sick, where do you want to be? You want to be at home. You want to be in your own bed. You want to be in your bathroom, just thinking about being so sick at, someone else's house. So today was rough, but their aunt who's living here in another apartment, she came over to check on them. We got them a lot of medicine and liquids and those kinds of things and took care of them, rice, all of those good things. And they definitely are feeling better. But I think that they were really, really missing their family. Alana's actually married. She's only 20, but she's already married. So I'm sure she was missing her husband to help take, all those people that take care of you when you're sick. And certainly the twins didn't have their mom. And it was this fine line of not being invasive, but making sure that they were okay. And it was a rough day. But other than today, it's up and down. It really is. And you can really, as you get to know people, you can, tell from their expressions. And, yes, there is the language barrier, but there's so much that can be said, and we see with body language, and yes, it's tremendous. So, there are definitely good days and bad days. I think that they've enjoyed getting back online. School. Everyone, is coming off these years of online school, and but they've enjoyed seeing their friends and connecting with them, and their teachers. That gives them some sort of sense of normalcy, I think. And then they've seemed to enjoy. They've been attending a Polish high school in downtown Katowice, and there are several other Ukrainian students there. But Yaroslav has spent some time with those friends on a Saturday afternoon, and they've traveled a bit. Their family education is really important to them, and I think they just felt like, well, we're here, and so they've been to Krakow and Wrocław and Warsaw, our capital. They're getting more comfortable here with our family for sure. Our children, they're just amazing, honestly. They could do really horrible things for the rest of their life, and I won't be mad at them. No, I'm just kidding. But they truly have exceeded our expectations of how they've handled situations with, just grace and hospitality. And, Parker is a little shy and, takes a long time to warm up to people. But Parker and Alina, discovered a love for art. They're both artists. So they'll draw things and go back and forth and show each other their new artwork. And Alina's she's very, very talented. And Parker is too, but she's 8, So that's been fun. In fact, like on St. Patrick's Day, which is obviously not very big in Poland, but we were trying to do something little. And so we just got green balloons. And so there were just green balloons all over the house, and they started drawing on them with Sharpies. And so they were drawing like leprechauns and then throwing them around. So, they've really connected with them. They both like board games. And so we have played more board games in the last few weeks than we had in a long time. And occasionally they'll sit down and want to watch a movie or something like that. I think one of the hardest things to kind of balance is Carson and I are both news junkies. We love politics. We love news. I have a journalism degree. I consume a lot of it. And so that's been sort of a balance. If we have CNN or BBC on the TV in the main room, we always, say, do you want to watch it? Do you want to have it on? And 9 times out of 10, they'll say yes, for sure that they do. But it's hard to, then have those conversations. We translate to kind of talk about what's going on. But I think they're doing as well as they possibly can. I mean, certainly having family here, while not their parents who are back in Kyiv, they've got other family here. And so that's been really important to them.
This is absolutely incredible. Incredible. And the humanity and the love is just, it's just, I'm speechless. How much communication do you have with Natalia and the twins' dad? Is it pretty frequent, or?
Yes. Natalia and I, we've been using Facebook Messenger. That seems to be the best method for her. When she went back, I guess a week after they had been here, we sent her back with a lot of battery packs for cell phones. So several of them. So in case obviously at the hospital they have generators, but in case anything was damaged. But, they were basically living at the hospital for the last, until this week when Kyiv was liberated, so to speak. So, they had good Wi-Fi and those kinds of things. So we've been able to communicate very well. What's interesting as a communications professional, I've noticed I type my message in English and then I translate it to Ukrainian and then I send it in Ukrainian. And they do the same thing. They send it to English for us. So when you get the message, you can read it right away and not have to translate it. So you do the work on the front end. And I've noticed that as I've communicated with everyone, that's what everyone's doing. So I have to dig into that if that's etiquette internationally, or I don't know. It was just fascinating.
I mean, it sounds like kindness and heart to me, to know that you're
yes.
doing one more possible tiny thing, but might be a big thing. Just what care and compassion and empathy.
Yes.
It's
for sure.
It's amazing how, Amy, you have taken, a situation from the moment you decided to get on those listservs to navigating this with such grace, to then growing it, and you're managing an operation now. I mean, you've partnered with a real estate firm, and you're also managing a household that's more than doubled. You inspire me as a human being to be better, to do more. And I know when we were hopping on, you were saying that if you're comfortable talking about this, you had conversations with people about whether or not you were going to look for a job prior to the war starting, and just how you're glad that you had this space to lean in to where you could help, because if you had a full-time job, you may not have felt that you had the capacity.
100%. I suffer from anxiety and depression, and have for most of my adult life. And I manage it, really well, like people who do often. And sometimes it's not as easy to manage. And so I was in a place in December and January where my therapist was like, Amy, you've got to get a job, because, I've not, coming here, I knew we had to get the kids settled and it's a different country and all of those things. But once that was sort of done and I'm just at home and then, waiting to pick up children from school, and, that's admirable. And, when parents want to make that choice, as many of my friends have done, and I've done at points in my career as well, that is a great situation for a lot of people. For me, what I've noticed is that I become so focused on me that the depression and anxiety can start spinning. And, you add that we're in a foreign country, we've got all these new routines and all these things that we're kind of up against. And so, my therapist, just said she really felt like I needed to get to work. And so, I've been applying for crazy jobs that I'm way overqualified for, but I just was like, I don't care. I just need to do something, kind of thing. And no one is calling, like, no one's it's like, okay, no one wants to hire me. So, but it definitely was serendipitous that it hasn't happened. Ironically, I'm a finalist for a position. I had my third interview this week. And I think that's likely going to happen for a full-time job. It is remote, which is critical, but it's funny because I'm like, I think I'm going to take it because I want to get more money into the Ukrainian humanitarian relief. So that's sort of a huge motivation for me to do it. It's very strange. So I think that I'll be able to manage it all, but yeah, so that's going to be a strange decision to have to make for sure. But it's just, and that happens in life, right? When it rains, it pours. It's like there's a drought and then everything else is happening, all at once. It's just the way it works. So we'll figure it out. And, there's articles and articles about this, but when you have depression and anxiety, helping other people is a huge, huge way to have some relief from that. And so I feel like I have a purpose for the first time in a really, really long time. I've done better meal planning because I have more people sitting at the dinner table. And, and I think that has been appreciated by my children as well. All the things like, I feel like I'm more organized because you have to be, because otherwise it would be too difficult to manage. But definitely, yes, spending a lot of time trying to figure things out for sure. And what we can do next. Like today, I do, just kind of a few times a day, look at the postings in this one Katowice Ukrainian relief group. And I just kind of see, is there any need at all that maybe I could help? So tomorrow I'm taking a suitcase to someone who needs a suitcase. I mean, just little things like that. So I try to do kind of one little thing every other day or something. And then obviously continue to check on all the people that we're helping. And they need that connection too. I think two women that I just want to mention that I think are just completely remarkable are Nastia and Valeria. And I was contacted by one of their colleagues in Kyiv, Gemma, and they all work together at an international school in Kyiv. So there are teachers. And Gemma contacted me and said that the two women had finally gotten gas for their cars, because there was no gas. So they were siphoning off gas, with obviously their neighbors' permission and friends to get enough to get out of the city. And that they were going to be following each other and would be, in Poland on a Saturday. And could I house any of them? Well, I already had a family and, I could have just easily just said, I'm sorry, I don't have. But like this person reached out to me and was like, can you please help? I mean, yes, I'm going to work my ass off, pardon my French, to see what I can do. And so we were able to place Valeria and her daughter, her sister-in-law, and her niece with Carson's colleague, Matush, and his wife. And then I was able to rent the first apartment for Nastia, her mother, and her daughter, Masha. And they've just stayed, like we've become this group, I can't really explain it. Like Gemma's still contacting me to make sure that, do they need anything? And we're just all kind of staying in touch. And it was really important for them to be able to know that they were driving somewhere, out of this horrific experiences. They were driving somewhere and they had a contact where they were going. So I think, that's been important too, just to know that there's someone that they know there or they've talked to or communicated with somehow.
100%. You have become an anchor. You've provided, a home-based connection for so many people. Mm-hmm. And then there's that ripple effect and people seeing you do it, seeing is believing. And hearing this, it's like, oh, well, I could probably do this too. And I was just talking to someone earlier today, and we were talking about how, you think to yourself, what could I possibly do? Sure, I guess I could donate, which there's absolutely do that if you can.
Right.
That's amazing.
100%.
But when you add to your awareness the desire of wanting to help, it's amazing how things will start popping up into your pathways that you couldn't have even, thought of. And so I've had that happen so much over the last month or so where, other than donating, I was like, what can I share on social? But then these really unique opportunities come up to just do a little bit here or there, and you take them. And so I just encourage everyone to keep that in your awareness if you have that desire. Give where you can. We don't have a vanity URL per se, do we, for your GoFundMe, but I'm going to read off the URL,
yeah.
and then also we can read off the title. So for anyone that wants, and this is also linked below if you're listening, so you could definitely go to the show notes, but it's GoFund.me/823AF619. Okay, so I'm just going to repeat that really quickly. It's also linked below. GoFund.me/823 A as in Apple, F as in Frank, 619. And then the name of the page.
Yes, support for Ukrainian refugee families. Yep.
Thank you for continuing to do this incredible, work, and the amount of heart and just what you've been able to give, emotionally, and still, manage the household, this operation, all the hats that you're wearing. What's one thing you wish everybody would just know that maybe is getting missed?
I think a couple things. One thing I want to say is I know that most of the people who have reached out to me and to my family and my friends, or have given, in some sort of, if it wasn't our fundraiser or another avenue, I think if you all were in Poland and likely the other countries where Ukrainian refugees are headed, you would see the love and the humanity. And I think you would open your house. I really, truly, I think you would do whatever you could, because people are people and we need to help each other and be there for each other. So that's one thing. I don't think that we, yes, we're doing what we can, but I don't think that, and I appreciate people saying like, thank you for doing this, of course, and that kind of thing. But I think truly that everyone's doing it. I talk to my neighbors, everyone has an example of what you're doing, and it's not in a braggy way at all. It's about, okay, maybe you're going to, connect someone that needs something. And it's just an incredible community to see all the love. So that's one thing. I think what you're just kind of talking about, if everyone can just do one thing, and connect and do something that they're comfortable with, whether it's giving to an organization, whether it's, sharing on social, keeping up with what's going on. I think that's probably the most important thing that people can do. And so that it stays in the forefront. I mean, we have, like any situation, some support has definitely dwindled as the weeks have gone on in this war. I think you're seeing that, as people are coming to the cities, there's not as many people there to help them or to, give them meals or, those kinds of things. And so we just need to keep up that support. But people are tired, people, and in addition, I think, a lot of those people that are doing those volunteer activities, they also, have people staying with them in their homes. So there's just a lot going on. But I do think one thing that was eye-opening to me that I really kind of learned this week is that, the refugees are slowing down coming into Poland, but a lot of that is because they can't get out now in different areas. So there is more humanitarian relief that is, super important. So I would encourage people to find organizations that are doing those on the ground, getting those supplies to where they are needed. And I'd be happy to share Anyone's, absolutely free to contact me. You can send me a message through that GoFundMe link, and I'd be happy to share some of those that I've seen working. And we have contributed to some of those as well. So there's a lot of good happening.
Is there one off the top of your head that people might be able to Google and find?
There is one. It's called the Skoda Group, which Skoda is a car manufacturer here. They're actually, I believe, a Czech company, but a very popular car brand here. And it's called like the White Skoda Group. And what they're doing is they have a white Skoda leading, and they go with like 22 cars into the Ukraine full of supplies and then bring people back. And they are doing some amazing work. So, and I have an acquaintance who's participating in that. So I'm able to get a lot of information about that. So that's one group that we've donated to. And if we continue to raise money, we're going to take care of obviously the people and the apartments that we've rented first and make sure that they have everything that we need. But if there's anything more, I will definitely want to contribute to that group as well.
Amy, thank you so much for sharing and leading the way, and just being willing to connect. I'm sending you a huge virtual hug here, and as are many others. It sounds like it's been quite the day in your household, and I encourage anyone that can contribute, please head below to the GoFundMe link. You now have heard from Amy. You have some insight into the situation and what she's doing with those funds. And I know I've contributed and will continue to. And just thank you. Thank you for doing this important work and the energy and awareness you're bringing to everything.
Thank you so much for allowing me to have this time with you and share our experiences, and peace and love from Poland.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the show. Hit me up on social media to let me know what you think. I'm at Amy Jo Martin on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I want to hear your Why Not Now moments so I can share them on the show. Just send me a note to whynotnow@amyjomartin.com. For show notes and other offers, you can visit amyjomartin.com/whynotnow. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for my email newsletter for exclusive content and announcements. A big thanks to Rock Salt Music for all of the tunes by the talented John Coggins. And of course, a hat tip to Richard Brewer for editing and producing the show. I'll see you next time. And until then, why not now?